You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or their affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Parallel Prism Show. Now, this is not the voice you was expecting at all. I know you're looking forward to hearing my lovely Jolene's voice. But tonight, we're actually going to do more of like an introduction to Jo's show. Because, as I say, we've kind of known her in different entities across the, different things she's done. So I really wanted to explore Jo a little bit more. So, Jo, welcome to your own show.
I know. That's a bit weird, isn't it? It's like, Kerry introducing my show? It feels a bit alien, if I'm honest. But hey, it always happens, doesn't it? So how's you anyway?
I'm very well, thank you. But I want to know all about you. So let's get on with it, because there's so much. There is so much about you, though, Jo. Because, half of it I didn't realise before, you coming onto the station and chatting to you and stuff like that. So I want to actually take you back to on your mediumistic side, your spiritual side.
Yeah.
Where did that bit start for you? Because that was pre-paranormal, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I honestly don't know where to start, because I've obviously had it since I was a child. So I was very, very young. My mum told me that I think my first experience was when I was about 2 years old, and I was sitting on the floor with a small porcelain tea set, and I was talking to somebody, and my mum asked who I was talking to, and I said Grandma, and I think it just carried on from there. And my mum, being my mum, was very supportive, very spiritual, very into mediums and things like that, but so was my grandmother, which I didn't realise until I got a bit older. So what I found quite strange was when my mum encouraged me to kind of keep it going, whereas most parents would probably say, oh, don't be so silly, you've got an imaginary friend, or you've got this, you've got that. So it started there, and I think my earliest memory of it was being sat on my hall floor when I had some form of assembly when it was infants. And I just remember watching my head teacher sort of like glide across the floor like this beautiful swan that she was. And she just had this beautiful array of colours, like a vapour following her. And that was then. I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So obviously went back and told my mum all about these beautiful colours that I'd seen. And my mum said, oh, those are auras. So I think I was about five then. And then I just continued. And then I think I was about 7. And somebody knocked on the door to speak to my mum. And I just shouted, it's Joyce. I've got somebody here to speak to her. And she came in, and apparently everything that I'd said was exactly right. So that's kind of where it all started. But those who are close to me will know that when I was younger, I didn't have... my parents lived in a 2-up, 2-down, basically. And I was always petrified of a wardrobe that was quite antique looking. But I don't know why I was petrified of it. But I think like most kids, you're scared of something, aren't you? Like either looking under the bed or... looking in things that you wouldn't usually look in. And this wardrobe was my Narnia moment. I hated it. I couldn't stand it. And it was constantly like people would walk out of that wardrobe, and that's what petrified me. But another thing that kind of springs to mind as well is when my sister was around about 2 or 3 and I was about 5, I'd been speaking to my mum about my grandma. And I just remember that my mum was sleeping in the bed with my sister, and she was tapped on the shoulder. Mm-hmm. But she had no recollection of who it was. She daren't turn round, even though my mum's quite spiritual anyway, but she wouldn't turn round. But she did speak to me about that, like obviously later on in life, which was interesting, because my mum's never kind of disclosed any experiences that she had. It was always, she just always kind of pushed me a little bit more. But
you was actually very young. Some of these memories you're talking about and these experiences you first had, you were very young when they happened. Now, from your experience, some people would argue that it is just like a, imaginary friend. You didn't really see something, you're a child. But these experiences, when you get those kind of things, stick in the mind, don't they? They're very vivid and they stick in the mind. More so than it would be if you'd had a daydream about the aura scenario or, playing teacups and stuff like that. These memories actually are so strong, aren't they, even now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember those because obviously I've grown up with them. And from the age of about 7, my mum bought me ghost books, and she bought me quite a lot of paraphernalia, from Harry Price to the Haunting of Borley Rectory, right through to the Haunting of Enfield and things. And my mum was like, why do you like this stuff? And I just find it really interesting. And I've always had a love of the paranormal since I've been really young, which obviously I kind of thought I was a bit of a weirdo when I was at school, because it wasn't the sort of thing that you kind of discussed with people, was it? And coming up to probably about 10, my family was involved in quite a serious car accident. We were walking on the brow of a hill, and a car came on the opposite side of the road, and the car swerved, and the car hit my mum and my dad. My dad was holding my younger brother, and the car subsequently dragged my mum through 3 walls and embedded her in a garden. So from that moment, obviously, spirit understand when you come under so much pressure and so much stress. And I had nothing, everything left me. And it was about a 3-year period where I felt quite lost, from being around about 10 to 13, because I was basically helping my mum to try and get back on her feet. I was looking after my brother and my sister, and just, trying to get on with school as best I could, because I'd missed quite a bit of school because my mum was in hospital for 9 months. There was a point where they didn't actually think she was going to make it, which is quite
stressful time.
Yeah. So spirit understood that, and they knew that I needed that time to kind of heal and breathe a little bit.
And deal with it. Because they're not long off the back of that, you then hit like puberty, basically, and you go through those challenging teenage years.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest, I think I was all right I say I think I was all right. I hope I was all right for my mum, because, I did do quite a lot of, I didn't really go out much when I was a kid. I was always helping my mum, and, it didn't really have much of a, by way of it's hard to explain, but it's like a childhood, when you play with your parents and stuff.
Yeah. But that's okay. So looking at your spirituality through that time, do you think that gave you the strength to carry you through some of those situations that you went through? Because they sound very, very stressful.
Yeah, it did, because it kind of, I fell back on that. And it's like anything else, I kind of always fall back to it.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I understand that. I always step back onto my spirituality. If I've stepped away for some reason, it's time to give my space that time to heal. And then when you step forward back into it, you feel like you can see the grander scheme. You sort of go, okay, so I learned from that. I haven't quite mastered the grateful bit.
Yeah, and that's one of the things as well, that you kind of, when you sit back and you realise just how far you've come. I'm getting really emotional.
I know, gosh, within 10 minutes I've made her cry. And I feel horrible. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you.
I think it's like, sometimes I can talk about it and it's absolutely fine. And sometimes I can I sit there and I think, if only. But anyway, it's a time that obviously I look at with fond memories, because I know that I helped bring up my brother and sister, and I helped my mum immensely. But then I look back and think, you've shaped my future for how I am now as a person, and how much, you kind of, in the paranormal, everybody has the crap, and sometimes we get beaten up for it, and people accuse people of faking things, and you do have to deal with it with such thick skin. And I think dealing with everything that I've dealt with over the past few years, the paranormal and my friends in the paranormal and the gift that I have, has really helped me. And it's always, when I'm on my own on a night time, because Mark's up in Faslane or wherever he is, basically, I lay here and I think, oh, what was that? I could hear that. What was, and it's just, sometimes I'll feel like a brush on my shoulder just to say, it's all right, I'm here, don't worry. And, it's things like that I take massive amounts of comfort from. But yeah, and, since those 3 years, I healed quite a lot with that. But then it was really funny, because I was in high school, and I used to go to high school in Huddersfield, which was called Royds Hall High School. And it was an old manor house, which had been obviously severely extended. And our history lessons and our French lessons used to be enclosed in like what was called the concourse. And it had a really big garden right in the middle with loads of glass corridors all the way around. But the stone stairs and the huge doors and everything just kind of made it feel really eerie and feel very, very cold. And I just remember saying to my friend at the time, who I'm still friends with, Pippa, and we walked from the main hallway, the main area to come through the front doors, and we turned left, and you were in the outsider quadrant.
Yeah.
And then you turned right to go down to a history down the history floor and the geography floor. And as you turned right, there was a door straight in front of you, and that was the photography class. And I can still remember it to this day. I turned right, and as I turned right, all the doors were open, which was unheard of, because they didn't really open on their own, but all the doors were open on their own. And I looked to the right, and all I could see was this woman, and I thought she was a nun. And my friend Pippa grabbed hold of my hand, and all she said was, "Do you see that?" And I said, What do you see? And she said, there's a nun. And she was shaking. She was shaking. And even now we still talk about it to this day. And, I just said, "I'm glad you can see her, because I can see her." And she was like, "Quick, we need to go to lesson." So we literally walked into photography. And Mr. Harris used to be one of those really hip geography teachers who, everybody loved. And we walked in, and he was such a joker. And he was like, "All right, girls." And we were like, and he was like, "What's up? You look like you've seen a ghost." And I just remember Pippa saying, "We have." And that's all she said. And he started to ask us questions. He laughed about it, but then after the lesson, he started to ask us questions. And he was just so jovial about it. But he said, "You're not the first girls to see her, And I was like, "Oh, right, okay." And then it all started to come flooding out. And then there was other people who'd seen things, and all the stories started to re-emerging then.
Yeah.
And it was great, because there wasn't just myself. There was then another girl called Jodie, who was in our little circle of friends at school, and Donna. And, we tried doing the Ouija board at Jodie's house. And it was really funny, because there was Pippa, myself, there was Donna, and we were just sat around, and Louise as well. And we were all sat around doing this Ouija board, and I'm sat there saying, "Girls, I don't think we should do this." And they're all going, "Yeah, let's do it. And then Jodie's brother was like nearly choking on a chicken bone. And she always says that to this day. She's like, "I can't believe we did that. And I found my chinchilla dead behind this plank." And then all of a sudden this, my brother was choking on a chicken bone. And I'd never done it since, because it's that stigma attached to the Ouija boards, isn't it? So,
yeah.
But yeah, school for me was hard. It was very hard. I got bullied quite a lot at school, so it was one of those things that I kind of kept to myself, that I could see things. I mean, Jodie Pippa and Louise and those people knew what I could do, but I kind of kept it hidden. And it was only until a guy who I used to walk to school with all the time called Ross Taylor, really, really lovely lad. And he actually, I said something to him just out of nowhere about his dad. And he was like, how do you know that? And I can't remember what I said to him now, but he was like, he was shocked. And even, I haven't seen Ross for many, many years, but we keep on threatening to have like a big school reunion. But yeah, so things like that kind of happened at that age. And then, of course, I went, I left school, met my first partner, my first boyfriend. But I never really did anything. I never really entered into it. Kind of, I wasn't really bothered. I was going out with my friends and, you know, living it up like you do when you're 17, 18. And then I went to university, and I remember just being in halls of residence, and I used to go to Huddersfield Uni, so where the halls of residence were, they were Storrs Hall. Now, people in Huddersfield will remember Storrs Hall for being a renowned hospital, psychiatric patients. So they were changed. This was changed and rebuilt into these halls of residence. And what was really strange is I was there on my own, because I used to work in a Wetherspoons when I was at uni full time, and then I'd go back to the halls, and sometimes I'd go home, or sometimes I'd, you know, just stay there because it was just easier. And I remember this one weekend there was nobody in apart from me and another girl who shared a couple of rooms a bit further down the hall, and all of a sudden I heard this almighty scream. And she come running down the hallway, and I sort of like wondered what the hell was going on. So I ran out my door and I said, "What's going on?" And she went, "I've just seen something walk through my wall." And she was drip white. I've never seen anything like it. And then about 4 days later, I had exactly the same thing. And I thought, I know she's seen this guy, because he just didn't acknowledge anybody. He just walked straight through the wall. And it was like the stone tape theory all over again. So that happened. And then, I don't know. I was working in my mum and dad's pub one New Year's Eve with my other friend, Emma. And I had a couple of drinks, and my mum and dad were socialising like they did. And I just remember I think it was just before the stroke of midnight, and I was loading the glass washer up. And all of a sudden I just looked, and I could see this boy in what I can only describe as like riding breeches, and had a hat on, but he was filthy. He was really mucky. And I just looked at him and subsequently just dropped this whole tray of glasses. And my mum was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Who invited him?" And my mum turned around, nobody there. So that was basically up to my 20s. And then I went abroad for a year, and it kind of, everything just, I didn't practice anything, I didn't do anything, and, you know, still had my love of history and still had my love of, you know, culture for foreign countries and things. But then as I was away, I met my ex-husband, so subsequently came back, had children, got married, you know, and that was it. But the more and more that I was unhappy and miserable, the more I turned back to the paranormal and back to how I was as a person previously. And I changed massively for somebody that really didn't appreciate anything. And I'll never do that again. Never. It was a difficult time. And I just remember back in 2000, I think it was 2014, I met my friend Wendy, who's a medium. But I met her at a spiritualist church, and I remember having to lie and say where I wasn't going. I couldn't say I was going to the spiritualist church because I used to get mocked, and you know, I used to get a barrage of abuse and stuff, which, looking back now, I wish I'd just been brutally honest and said, "Look, I'm going to the spiritualist church. This is who I am. If you don't like it, then that's absolutely fine."
It's amazing the influence somebody can have over you, isn't it? That you'll change your behaviour or hide behaviour because of their reactions.
Yeah, and I think it was because I constantly got told, oh, it's a pile of crap, it's mumbo jumbo, and there's no such thing, rah-de-rah-de-rah. And when I kind of pieced up all of the experiences that I've had, I actually said, well, why have I experienced all this? And you're saying that there is nothing out there, there's nothing, and you just literally cut it off. But yeah, 2016 was kind of a huge turning point for me. My relationship had broken down to the absolutely nothing. There was nothing there. I had no friends. I had very little self-esteem. I was I wasn't confident in myself. I wasn't the happy-go-lucky Joe that most people actually see and hear these days. And but yeah, that was a very horrendous time, I'm going to say.
Yeah, traumatic.
But going back now, I'd already started to put the foundations into place as to where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And 2016 saw the birth of Phantasmic Paranormal. And literally within, I'd probably say the space of 2 months, I'd set up a website. We'd got a couple of venues under our belt. We'd basically marketed everything as much as we could. We'd found iMovie, like movies that we could promote our events, that people were like jumping on the bandwagon, following us. And it just became a little bit of a snowball overnight. And I found that I'd got friends who'd got the same sort of interests as me. And these people were actually lovely people.
And allowing you to be who you are as well, probably for the first time ever.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it kind of came from, really. I think I came back into my own. I started to flourish a little bit more, and I started, I went back to work full time after having some severe time off due to, being depressed and obviously just miserable, basically. Someone can do that to you. It's just you don't realize how low you actually become until you're at the point where you just think there's just nothing I can do. I can't see a way out of this. But then it was really strange because the little things that I'd heard prior to my marriage breakdown was my ex-husband used to kind of shout at me in quite a rough voice. But I was in the shower one day and I remember hearing this same voice shouting me, but it was Joe. And it was quite aggressive and it was very now a matter of fact. But I didn't just hear it the once, I heard it about 4 times, to the point where I was just like, what do you want? And literally, I went downstairs, there was no sign of him, and I went back up into the spare bedroom, and he was halfway through mowing the lawn. So that then, triggered something. I was like, oh my God, I'm hearing things again. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see things again. And a good friend of mine who I've known since my son started school, Lucille, she's a bit older than me, actually, and very, very introverted person, but she came to me and I gave her a reading and I told her quite a few things that she said that she'd never spoken to anybody about. So that kind of gave me a little bit more confidence.
But this is a step forward, right? Since this point where you've literally, you've got a bit more confidence, you're out there, you've got a goal, you've set up Phantasmagorica, whatever. I can never say it. That one. And then, and so you're just sort of being actually very first steps. This is like the Fool card in tarot, isn't it? That's the point you are. You're just stepping forward into the new phase of Joe, and your spirituality actually under this environment has actually blossomed, hasn't it?
Yeah, tenfold really, because I don't know, everything kind of changed when Phantasmic was born. And, I started to attend more and more spiritualist churches, and I started to immerse myself into more and more teaching. So teaching myself, obviously, what makes me kind of switch on, what makes me, able to receive these messages. And do you know what? If I had £1 for every time somebody said to me, how do you do it? I would be so rich.
Oh, yeah.
But,
I know. I feel you, girl, because I work with crystals and minerals, and they go, well, how? How does that, how are you doing that? And what can you say? So a lot of it's down to your gut, isn't it? It's a gut reaction. Yeah. It's an intuition thing. We talk about this intuition, this gut reaction quite a lot. Throughout all the times in your life, and like you've said tonight, there have been some really traumatic times in that. Has your gut ever been in your... It's told you something, but you kind of ignored it and did it. But then afterwards you think, I bloody knew that. Why didn't I listen to myself?
Yeah, I think, well, I don't really want to I hate discussing it, but, my marriage breakdown, I knew years and years and years before I knew I should have walked away. But I didn't. And that now, I deeply regret doing that. But obviously it's taught me more things about myself as a person that, it's difficult because my gut was telling me so many different things. And then when you've got somebody in front of you telling you something totally different, and you know for a fact that it's true, and you just think, oh, you've just got no respect for me whatsoever. So that was hard. But yeah, Phantasmic came along. I then started to do more and more events. I started to do more and more readings just for friends of friends, and then Celebrity Haunted Hotel happened.
Yeah.
Which I never believed in a million years we would get picked to do that, but they came on an investigation with they just messaged me out of the blue on email, and Adele just said to me, can we do an investigation with you? And I said, yeah, of course you can. So she came and did an investigation with us, and I described this person to a T, and Emily took a photograph. And sure enough, you could see the outline of this person with these red like jeans on and a denim shirt, and you could see the outline against the tree. And it was only when I said he stood right there by the tree, and Emily just snapped it, and literally he was just there. But the place where we went, Wombwell Woods, is notorious for suicides. So we took them there, which nobody else really took them. They took them to notorious places. So it was quite a shock to get the call and say that we'd made it to the show, and it was, everything just happened so quickly then. And that's where I met Alex and Mickey from UK Haunted, who, I'm so proud to still call them my friends because they're just great guys. And, and then I met Carl Hutchinson, and then from there it's kind of snowballed. And don't
forget Barry.
And Barry, I met Barry when we did Haunted Hotel, and also Alex Gibb, as she's now known. She used to be called Alex Thornhill, and she was the psychic on the show, which it was quite nice because I shared, Alex was scared when we were doing the show, and she wouldn't actually stay in her own room. She wanted to come and share a room with me and share a bed with me, which was nice because we used to have a great laugh. And and she did teach me an awful lot about the whole mediumship side of things. And she actually was the one person who said, this isn't just what you're about, Jo. She said, you've got an awesome career coming up. She said, and don't doubt yourself ever. So, and I just said, I'm not really bothered about the fame. I'm not bothered about anything to do with that. I'm just happy doing my investigations, doing what I love doing, and just going home at the end of the night. And I just said, if you can find me somebody who's going to, love me for me, I said, that'll do just for me. And I did Celebrity Haunted Hotel in 2016 in the October. And then that was it really. Everything went really quiet for a bit. And then I
Hold on. Let's talk about the Celebrity Haunted Hotel, because that's quite a big experience. I mean, that was live TV for, 3 nights, if I remember rightly now. 5 nights.
5 nights. So, yeah.
I'm going to tell you a little secret. I only watched one.
Off, that's fine.
Sorry, I watched one night. So there were 5 nights. That is a massive deal for someone who's never done TV before. Is quite getting used to her own confidence and her own skills.
Yeah.
At that time, I mean, we've acknowledged how quite early in your journey this was, really, both on the spiritual front and on a paranormal front. So this is a big gig. This is like you were cacking it right?
To be honest with you, we've been on set. First, I mean, we used to get up in the morning. We used to all have breakfast together, and we'd get picked up at about 10:30. We'd be on set from 11 o'clock in the morning, and from 11 o'clock in the morning, we were just doing camera angles. We were doing, what blah blah blah, what people would say and what people would do. But live TV is just that. It's live TV. It's just like me and you speaking like we are doing now, and having to think on your feet without saying it's really hard. And it was lovely because we worked alongside Christine Lampard and Matt Richardson, and everybody on that set they couldn't do enough for you. They were so lovely. And it's quite interesting to see people out of their comfort zones as well, because poor little Emily, I mean, she was my little sidekick. She's like my little sister. And even though she was quite young at that time, she was a rock to me, really. She came and helped me do all of the events, and she got herself on the TV, and she did really well on TV, and it's kind of set her up for kind of life now, because I mean she doesn't divulge in the paranormal anymore. She's more into her horses like she was previously, but yeah, that time she was amazing for me. But also Celebrity Haunted Hotel kind of reconnected me back with one of my really, really good best friends from school, and that was Rachel, and she became a member of the team as well. So it opened up many avenues for me with my old school friends, and more opportunities really to go where I wanted to go.
Yeah. So you come off the back of it, and I bet you it was flying high. I bet it was like, oh my God, I've just done 5 live nights of TV, doing what I love. This is going to be amazing, But it was a slower process than you thought, wasn't it? Because it went, like you just said, it went very quiet afterwards.
Yeah, I think with anything like that anyway, it's the genre, and I think the whole concept of the show wasn't discussed properly with the production team. I mean, Alex and I discuss things quite often, quite on a night time, and we'd be sat saying, if only they'd do this, if only they'd listen to us, if only, we could actually give them the concept for them to mold, around what their original concept was, because we'd got all of the experiments and we were coming up with new experiments that we knew had never been seen before on TV. But it was just like nobody would listen, and it was difficult because even though it was a production of 5 nights, they'd thrown quite a lot of money into it, but they'd missed some key things, and it's things like that. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
But looking back now, that kind of made me want to be more involved in the TV side of things, and I started to write things then, like TV show wise, and just put them in a little bit of a book and just leave them alongside. But yeah, it was a great experience, and I am very thankful and very fortunate to have been offered that opportunity, and I'll always be grateful to Adele and the guys at North One for giving me that.
And that one thing I will say for you is what I've learned about Jo through the time that I've known you is that you kind of stick to people, don't you? Like you've made those friends through that. Yeah. It was all brought together on that, and they stuck. You still talk to them on a regular basis or work with them occasionally, and so that you do stick. You're a sticker, aren't you? You do like to stick to people you've bonded with under really good circumstances. Yeah.
I just think I'm I love people. I'm just what I'm like, Kerry. I you know, I like to look after my friends and, you know, look after the people that I'm with. And, you know, it's a nice feeling, isn't it? Just to know that you can hopefully one day call back on one of those favors that, you know, one day. Mm-hmm. If you desperately needed something, you know, you could call them and they'd be there. So, but yeah, so yeah, that happened. And then 2017 came about and I got another call. Yeah. And I was like, this is amazing. And this call was from this morning's ITV's This Morning. So I got a very, very cryptic telephone call. And she said, oh, we'd like you to go to Muncaster Castle. So I said, oh, right, okay, what day would you like me to go? And she was like, tomorrow. I was like, wow, it's a bit quick. But I didn't say anything. I just booked the time off of work. And the woman said to me, your host will meet you there. And we'll see you there. If you can bring all of your equipment, that'd be fantastic. So I said, have I got a dress code? Have I got anything? She said, no, you just come as you are. I was like, no problem. I'll do that then. Well, I drove to Muncaster Castle and I literally walked into the venue and lo and behold, Mr. Peter Andre was stood right in front of me. Like, you must be Joe. And I was like, I am. And he was like, oh, come on in. And he was so lovely and so friendly. And
I've got to ask this, and this is really bad, right? I know it's sorry to overspeak you. Did you touch his pecs?
No, I didn't.
Oh my God, why didn't you? He had awesome pecs.
No, he's not my type, Kerry. He's too much of a pretty boy.
Just my little secret fetish then that's now out there. I bet you were gobsmacked though, weren't you, when you saw...
Yeah, I was, because I didn't I expected it to be somebody like Alison Hammond or, you know, one of the other presenters that did regular features with them. I expected it to be somebody from Towie or something. But when Peter Andre was stood there, I was like, okay, this is just a job. You can just crack on, Joe. And it was really good, actually, because we got some amazing, you know, like orbs and things like that. And it was really weird because I did say something quite personal to him. And I just mentioned it because I kept smelling this certain smell, and I actually mentioned it to him, and he stopped and he was like, I can take that. And I was like, that's all I need to know. So I didn't say anything else to him. Mm-hmm. But then we kind of discussed his ex haunted house, and he actually said to me, well, I'm just still in two minds with that. He said, but my house where I live now, because obviously he's been with Emily for quite a long time, hasn't he? So his house now, apparently where he lives, is haunted, he says. So the jury's still out though, so I'm not sure on that. But yeah, that was great. And the producer of that was, you know, he was asking me loads of questions. He was really friendly. He was asking me more and more, like, he wanted to know a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more science behind everything. So we just sat chatting, and then it got aired a couple of days later. And then about 2 weeks after that, I got another call from This Morning. And I was like, this is weird. This is mad. And apparently the producer from the Peter Andre feature had been off sick. He wasn't very well. And this guy had to edit the features, and he'd seen me. And he was producing this other feature at Bolsover Castle in Cheshire. So he said, oh, we'll send a car to come and pick you up. We'll take you to Bolsover Castle. Don't worry about food or drink or anything. We've got you covered. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay. And I just remember saying, oh, I don't know if I can come. I've got a job interview tomorrow. Well, where's your job interview? And I said, well, it's in Birmingham, because it was for an area sales rep for a new beauty brand. So I said, oh, I've got to go there in the morning. So he said, well, out of courtesy, what we'll do is we'll keep your driver in the morning. We'll take you back to the hotel. You can freshen up, and then the driver will take you to your interview and then drive you home. So I did this feature with 3 young ladies who'd never been involved in the paranormal before at the Bolsover Castle with the haunted teddy bear. Yeah. It was quite good, actually, because these girls had got no idea what to expect. And I was awake all night. I was watching the monitors. I was trying to figure out what activity was going to happen, if anything was going to happen. But it was quite a calm night, very cold, but very calm. And I just remember looking at my watch in the morning, it said 6:30, and I was like, I don't know where the time's gone. And then that got aired at 11 o'clock the next morning, which honestly, to do the editing that quickly from like a 12-hour investigation was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I was I got taken to my job interview by Alison Hammond's driver, who had a great conversation. He was so lovely, and he was like, oh, you know, it's fantastic that you're so down to earth. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to change for anybody. So yeah, so that was 2017. And then, gosh, I feel like I've done loads, but I've not really done much. And then,
well, you have.
Well, yeah, 2018 obviously saw me, was one of my happiest years ever. You know, we started to do the Supernatural show. We were loving doing the radio show. We were loving doing our investigations. The events were still going thick and fast, but I started to be asked to be going on to other events with other paranormal teams, which made me kind of realise that para-unity does actually exist within certain teams. Not all of them, but certain teams and certain people. And July, everything just kind of happened all at once. I got a call in. Well, actually, I'm going to go back. Actually, July is a different matter, but I'm going to go back to probably February time, because I got another call and I was like, oh my goodness, this is great. And I was asked to go and film on Britain's Scariest Hauntings again.
Yes.
So that was fantastic, because, you know, I'd not seen Barry since, you know, 2016. I'd not seen Barry since. Although we spoke, I hadn't seen him for quite a while, and he had his twin daughters and all the rest. And it was so nice just to catch up with him. But that was aired back in November, December of last year. So watching that come down the line, it was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So that all happened. And it was a great show, because Pick, who is the channel, commissioned Woodcut to kind of do some more series of that as well, which is brilliant, because it just means that the paranormal genre for TV was growing massively, and the likes of Most Haunted were kind of being pushed out, which is what is needed. You know, we need some injection of fun. You need an injection of new blood as well, because different people bring different aspects of the paranormal, and I'll explain all of that in a minute. But yeah, so that happened. And then just when I thought that life couldn't get any better, I actually met Mark, and my life changed massively. And he's been such a positive influence. You know, he does work away quite a bit, but he is very supportive. Every time I've got a phone call.
She's getting emotional, getting everybody just letting you know. She's loved up. She is so loved up, and it is so lovely to see after some of the things you've been through in the time, you know, and you have confronted so many personal demons by doing some of these projects that would daunt and overwhelm a lot of people. So that's actually really big credit to your personal journey through it. And you can see your growth as a medium, use that term, as a psychic medium throughout that time as well, because you've been working very closely. And I'm going to get you back onto solid ground, so don't worry. Gary, we can't not talk about Gary Fields and how he's influenced your spiritual journey, because he's really worked with you on aspects to do with your mediumship, hasn't he?
Yeah. Gary is one of my best personal friends in the industry. He's like my father. I always call him my dad, because he's just, you know, he's always there. If I've got a problem or I can't see something beyond something, he'll always be there to kind of talk me around it. And it's always nice that you can kind of have that person to go to, like a mentor. And I'm not going to just mention Gary, because I've got another friend who's who lived in my village, but she's very under the radar. She lives in Boston now, but she helped me massively as well on my journey. But yeah, there's just so many people who have kind of shoved me along as well, if you understand what I mean. Because I've always never had that kind of confidence in myself. I've always thought, oh, I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not good enough to do that. Whereas the likes of MJ Dixon, you know, you are good enough to do this. And she is a good force, you know, to have. And, you know, being at Drakelow and having the experience that I had at Drakelow, especially with her and Claire, was just phenomenal. And that was just me experiencing that just from a female perspective, like the power of three sort of thing. It was just very, very strange. But then, you know, you've got the likes of Alex, who I talk to regularly with regards to experiments and what you can do next and thinking out of the box. And then, you know, who else I've got? Oh, there's so many people who I speak to. And it's, you know, it's lovely. Like, obviously, Karen and Eddie Frey from Keep Paranormal, they're really, really good friends of mine. And they actually came out with Mark and I when we were in Tenerife earlier on this year. So it is nice. And Mark's, you know, like I said, Mark's very supportive and knows kind of the majority of my paranormal friends as well, Eddie and Karen. He knows of Gary. He hasn't had the pleasure of meeting him just yet, but I'm sure he will at some point. But
so have you actually taken Mark out on an investigation yet?
I'll say yes and I'll say no, because we went to see Dave Barrett, because I've not seen Dave for ages, and his wife. So we went through to 30 East Drive. Well, you know, Charlene was there as well, and there was a couple of others from Project. I can't remember what they're called now. I can't remember their team name, but they were there. And an old friend of mine, Simon, was there as well. And we were just sat in the living room, and Mark was just sat there, and he was like, it's a bit boring, this, isn't it, Joe? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, it's not haunted. But that's, you know, Mark's a skeptic, so it's going to take an awful lot for me to convince him that something is out there. But hopefully, touch wood, one day I might actually get him on a really good paranormal investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the jury is out for him, I think, but like anything, he's very supportive. And, you know, I did say something to him when I first met him, and he was like, oh my God. So it's things like that. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a year, and I'm just really thankful that he came into my life when he did.
Sounds perfect little world you've got going on there at the moment. She's grinning now. She's happy again.
I wish it was perfect. You know, you still have those things, don't you, that still bubble in the background, and you know you've got to kind of deal with those things. But
yeah,
I keep thinking to myself, a little at a time, Joe, a little at a time, Joe. And you know, I try not, and like work. My work's busy at the moment. You know, working with paranormal groups. I get invited to go here, there and everywhere, and I can't thank those guys enough. You know, Alison Quick and Julie Staniland and all those people, Mandy Fellows, who invite me to go with those guys. And it's so nice to, you know, because Mark's not here all the time, so sometimes I'm on my own for you know, months at a time, so I have to kind of get out and about and see these people and enjoy what I'm doing. And I do. I love what I do.
So do you think now, at this stage of life, when you've looked back at other stages, you're at the strongest you've ever been?
I wouldn't say I'm the strongest I've ever been. I'd probably say I'm able to deal with a lot more than what I was able to deal with. I think 2020 is going to be my year. I think that is going to be the year where everything is put to bed that needs to be put to bed. Ghosts are going to be laid to rest that need to be laid to rest, and that's the start of my happy ever after. So that's, you know, and
it's not that far away, really.
It's not now, but it's there's things on the horizon. I keep getting told that there's trips to America happening for TV purposes. I keep getting told that I'm going to be with a group of girls rather than a mixed team, which is strange as well. But I also keep getting nudged to write a little bit more as well. And I think, obviously, whilst Mark's away, you know, I may try and have a bit of a dab hand at writing. I'm not very good, but I'll try and see what I can come up with. But
and then that's where you surprise yourself, is when you actually go, I'll have a go at that.
Yeah. But,
you do surprise yourself, I think. So you've come to Parasearch Radio, and you did start with a dual co-host, but you've stepped forward as a presenter in your own right now. What is it you want to bring to your show? Because at the end of the day, this is your slot now. Your 9 p.m. on a Monday is our Joe's slot. So I feel like I've taken over it, but only for tonight, everybody. Next week, back to normal.
I want to bring a little bit different, because in the Supernatural show, we touched upon paranormal investigators and going on events and, you know, doing what we love to do as a duo. And, you know, it's like anything. Life kind of takes you down those different paths, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And now I feel it's time for me now to kind of introduce the world to mediums who are not very well known. And also how they got into their journey, because I've been rabbiting on for 50 minutes already, and I feel like I've not really said anything. But I feel like people will know me after listening to this. But I also feel that other mediums bring different things to the table. Like Sally Morgan, for instance, the amount of people that messaged me and said, "What an amazing interview!" Because all they see is Sally on the stage, who is very, you know, very hyper, very, you know, hello, lovelies. And, you know, as a person, she is so, so different.
Yeah, she was. And I have to say, I always used to be a bit like, it was one of the people you take, you know, like, imitates is the word I'm going for. But when you was interviewing her, you really got to see a completely different side, and that's really important to show that side too. I mean, we're very focused on, getting data and, you know, trying to find out the mechanics of why the paranormal works and the psychology behind everything. But actually, there's a huge spiritual side that work alongside that field. And is there something there? Do you know what I mean? And seeing that, and it does seem to be that way, that people do have experiences and, you know, have a spiritual journey. I've had a personal spiritual journey myself, you know, so I can completely empathise. But I think you're right in bringing that voice to Parasearch. It would be really good to hear that side of things more than, you know, as well as all the other sides that we hear. They definitely need a voice.
Yeah, I think a lot of the mediums out there as well who are paranormal investigators, you wouldn't actually know that they're a medium because they don't really come out and publicize it an awful lot. And a lot of paranormal teams have a resident medium, but they don't really disclose it when they're doing events and things like that. So it's going to be interesting. I've got a few people on my hit list. So Andy Warrington, if you're listening, I'll be after you. Come on my show. I've got a couple of people who I desperately want to get on, but I also want to give a platform to people who are unknown within the industry, because, you know, I spoke to one girl, Lucy, a couple of weeks ago, in fact, a couple of days ago, and she said to me, "I'd love to come on your show. I'm still a beginner. However, I'd love to come on." And I said, "Well, that's great, because we can do a show all about how to begin, where you've come from, you know, what you're trying to teach yourself, where you're going for the information that you desperately seek." And she was like, "Oh my God, yeah, that's great. But, you know, that show could help a different group of people. You know, there's the old hats like, you know, myself and, you know, whoever has been around for God knows how long, Derek Akora and all those people. But you've got the next generation coming up who necessarily have the gift, but they don't really know what to do with it."
And that's one of the hardest things, isn't it? Explaining the terminology. I mean, we talk in terms of opening and closing and stuff like that. but it's a process that you go through. It's actually very good for your own mental self-examination as well, which is one thing I've noticed amongst like the spiritual community, which is a whole different genre. It's not just paranormal.
Yeah.
You're going into the healers and the you know, the crystal, you know, people and stuff like that. And when you start talking to people like that, it's as much a work within as a work without.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an incredibly important thing to come to terms with.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, I think it's good. I'd like to do an in-depth show as well about if it's inherited, because my grandmother was a medium. My mum's very, very spiritual, but she's more of an earth witch more than anything. She loves growing things and crystals and everything. But apparently my great grandmother was a medium as well. So that's, you know, I'd love to research whether that is actually true, that it's inherited.
These are fascinating concepts that we kind of sometimes miss on the other shows. Now, in the paranormal field, do you think that there's been almost like a stigma attached to mediumistic work in the field in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I do, but I think that's the TV side of things, the element of entertainment. You know, there's an awful lot of things that we cannot say for Ofcom rulings. There's so much red tape with, you know, TV, and it's just one of those things. You can't mention wealth, you can't mention financial things, you can't mention a hell of a lot. So I do feel that, you know, even though we do have freedom of speech within the country, it's sometimes deemed as we're not allowed to do it. But I do feel that certain mediums have been exploited on TV in a derogatory manner. I'm not going to mention any names, but I do feel that certain TV shows do set mediums up to fail. But then again, it's like anything else. You know, everybody wants proof that the paranormal exists. Everybody wants proof that mediums exist, and people want proof that we can communicate with people who have passed. And, you know, people want proof that we can tell the future. And, you know, it's difficult trying to explain to somebody how you know things about the past. I mean, it's like last night we stayed in Walsall. There was a few of us actually that went down to the Mental Fest, and we stayed in the hotel called the Linden House. And we was chatting to the two girls behind the bar, and I gave one of the girls a reading, and she was just like, I just mentioned a name just out of note, and I said, do you know somebody called Darren? And she just said, yeah. And literally within 5-10 minutes, it was just like information overload. And she's messaged me actually on Facebook earlier, and she was like, thank you so much. And, you know, it's things like that I kind of think I'm doing the right thing here. I am doing the right thing. But then again, sometimes when people ask for it, they don't necessarily know what they're going to get, and then,
or don't want to hear what the message is.
Yeah, so there is that as well, which, you know, obviously happened at one time, and that quite upset me, which, you know, I think I'm only human at the end of the day. I do have feelings, and, you know, although I may come across as being quite hard-faced and thick-skinned, I am, as you can tell, I'm a little bit of an emotional little pussycat, really.
She is, everybody. It's been gauging it throughout the show. Can I go into that area? Will I upset her again?
It's a good job you can see me and nobody else can, isn't it? Because, Jesus.
All I can say is she's a very pretty crier, just as much as she's very beautiful in real life. Well, we're coming to the end of your very first, your interview show.
Oh, that's gone so quick.
It has. Well, we've got a deeper understanding of what you're all about and where you want to go with your show now. Would you like to have the last few words?
I don't know what to say, Kerry, because I'm useless. So you say it and I'll tell everybody the next time.
Let's get out.
You want it? It was just to make Gemma do this because I can't do it.
Yeah, you can. She'll be a dab hand by the end of the month. Tomorrow evening on Parasearch Radio, we have got the 8 p.m. show, The Haunted Connection, kicking off with Neil and Jane interviewing Charlene Lowe Kemp. And then followed that at 9 p.m. by the Paranormal Concept Show with myself and Paul Rook and Kieran, talking all about symbology. And on that note, if you miss any of our shows, don't forget to go over to our YouTube channel and click like, share and subscribe. And on that note, we better go. So say good night, Jo. Thank you.
Good night. God bless everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.